Absolutely. Okay, I thought, well, first, let's start, if we can, I'll offer a prayer and then we'll jump into the discussion with Sue here. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks for this evening and for this opportunity to be able to dream big and to brainstorm and think about what you're calling us to in the near future and in the future for Harmony Springs. We are grateful and give you thanks this evening for how you've seen us through this pandemic and how you're continuing to stretch us and mold us into the church that you want us to be. We are grateful tonight for Sue and her inspiring personality and words and wisdom. And we ask that you may bless our time together this evening in our discussion and in our planning. In your name, we give thanks for all of this. Amen. All right, I thought I would just start this evening before I turn it over to Sue a little bit to just kind of bring everybody up to date. So we're all starting from the same point this evening. Sue and I had a great conversation here recently, and Debbie had put together a lot of the breakthrough prayer initiative activities we've been doing at Harmony Springs here. Can you believe that the first time that we video conferenced with Sue was like in the end of 2019 before the world all changed? So we've been doing our best to continue to maintain those breakthrough prayer initiative activities throughout 2020 and into 2021 here. And Sue has a lot of wisdom I hope that we can bring to the top this evening in both the breakthrough prayer activity, but also just to spend some time as leaders of this congregation to be able to think about where we are in light of the pandemic and maybe some things that the pandemic has changed for how we do church. And with our building going up and soon to be finished, we've got a lot going on and a lot to think about in what the ministry of Harmony Springs looks like in our next season of ministry together. So I did want to, Debbie put together a great one-page sort of synopsis of those breakthrough prayer activities, but is there anything you want to highlight or throw out, Debbie, as we jump into things here?
No, I don't think so. I think the the paper kind of or the summary speaks for itself, unless Sue has a question that
Sure.
she'd like to ask.
Okay.
Oh, Debbie, you did a fantastic job. Go, Debbie, go. She's really talented, isn't she, everybody? And I was so inspired looking at this and all of the prayer that's been going on. And I guess, Pastor Joel, my question for the team is, with breakthrough prayer, we're asking, we're telling God we're going to surrender ourselves so that God can break through and do the new things with the new possibilities. And part of it is then noticing and naming big and little things that you really have seen God do or seeing God do in the life of the church or in your own life following Christ. And I guess I would ask, since you've been doing all this prayer initiative, what have you noticed? What breakthroughs have you noticed? What what responses have you seen happening that you're thinking, oh my gosh, all this prayer is really opening the door for God to do some things, and just wondering what people might pop out with here. Pastor Joel, could we just take just a moment and let people unmute yourself, and what do you want to notice and name as a result of all this prayer?
Absolutely. Yeah, I want, you all might have thought you were logging in just to listen to us talk, but I want you to share your thoughts and be interactive here tonight too. So go for it. Unmute yourselves and let us know. You can use that raise your hand thing too if we start to get a whole bunch of answers at one time. Debbie, yes.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think one of the most amazing things, Sue, has been the number of people that we've continued to attract to Harmony Springs, even in a pandemic. We're not in a building, we're not meeting in person, and yet we're welcoming people online. I think prayer, as well as Joel reaching out and Jennifer reaching out and keeping contact, and our, I guess our church people keeping contact with one another. But I just think that's an amazing thing, that we've had so many new people that are at least checking us out while we're still in a pandemic.
You know, isn't that amazing? Isn't that like the work of the Spirit of God? You know, something that doesn't even make sense in the pandemic, and that kind of people paying attention and, you know, checking out. Debbie, isn't that amazing? Amazing.
Yeah, we've seen the faces of some people who've moved away, and they're able to participate with us in worship in a way that we never expected before. So even people who take extended vacations, we've seen them on a pretty regular set of Sundays. And when I travel, I'm usually my wife's usually putting the worship service on if we're on the road at that particular time, which seems to have happened the last couple of times we've needed to travel too. So that wasn't possible before, and it doesn't even feel strange anymore.
Mm.
And the other thing I'd say is that the space that we gave up was immediately converted into use for COVID testing. So I feel like that space continues to be blessed in our absence.
Mm.
You know, the fact that Greg has said that worshiping online doesn't even feel strange anymore. In fact, you know, when Greg, they travel, just turn it on. There's still, you know, worship is part of your life, and you're still attending wherever you are. That there is a breakthrough for all of us, isn't it?
Mm.
Do you know that this isn't about being in that certain space anymore? This is about the power of worship together, and hearing God's word preached and all that. That is super cool. What else?
Yeah, no excuses when you're on vacation now. You can log in.
Right.
One thing I really love, having attended most of the Saturday morning prayer for the property sessions, is, you know, we have a list of very specific items. We pray for the building, for the community, for those who would come, for the church, for the workers, and so on. And you know, we spend 20 to 30 minutes talking about that each week. And it has been, I mean, a long time, since November or so, I think October even, September maybe, that we first met in person, and then moved it online in November. But even in all those weeks and all those, you know, repeated prayers, they're really not repeated. And what I'm really loving is that there's so much, I don't know, ingenuity and big thinking about what's possible in the prayers. It started off with, dear God, keep the workers safe, and, you know, when they go home to their families. And while we still pray that, you know, there's been more to it since then. And it's just really great to see the richness of the ideas, the thoughts, and the focus of those members who come to the prayer.
Mm. What else? Shannon, yes, I see it.
I'm just, you know, I don't know how much of it is necessarily breakthrough prayer, but just consistent prayer since, you know, Debbie and a handful of us other ones that have been in this process for so many years, and that just the timing of it all. Like, I mean, it's completely God's timing on when this building's going to open, and how much we have changed from where we started, you know, what our ideals were to where we are now. And honestly, I just feel like we are right where we need to be right now. And we just have so much more of an opportunity in spite of COVID and because of COVID. You know, I feel like we just opened up so many more things. And this is all what God wanted us to do. From God, Debbie, when did we start this?
Well, let's take it all the way back in 2012 when we left downtown Akron.
Right.
Came out to green. I mean, it's been a long journey and a long process, and every step of the way has been important and had its certain lessons for us to learn, I think. But 2012, Sue, is when we left downtown Akron and went to green. And one of the things I remember about our regional pastoral staff, one of the things they said to us in meetings, look for people of peace in your new community, people that you can partner with and do ministry with. And I have to tell you honestly, I thought, well, that sounds like a really good idea, but really, how does that work? How do you really happen to find people of peace? And how does that really work in the real world? You know, putting human limitations on it. But I tell you, we came down to green. We partnered with several different mission activities with different people already in the community who were doing wonderful, good things. We tagged along. We did some things on our own. And I still look back to that and think about that as being one of the best pieces of advice that our little, committee was given as we were looking at moving to green. And it has just, I think, blossomed in many ways over and over and over again. Joining with other people in green who have, who want to change the world. I mean, and do good things for others.
Yeah, Kevin, I see your hand, but I just want to echo that, Debbie, it's, after a certain period of years or time, you begin to see the fruits of that labor. Sometimes it just takes a little while, but I was just thinking even tonight, some of the activities that Harmony Springs did, even before I came on board at the church, have resulted in the people here we have tonight, so sometimes it feels like you're not making an impact, but years later you realize you really are. So I echo that. Kevin, you want to throw something out?
Yeah, I just wanted to share. This has been really nice to hear, and I think I've had a very similar experience with the youth. The first over the summer, it was kind of hard to keep all the kids engaged and interested in things like that, and we're already a small group, and but we adjusted, and because of that, we've had some of our best conversations, some of our funnest meetings. They've connected more than they ever have, and I think we have a stronger identity now than we ever have as like a youth group. And I think they're more motivated than they ever have been to like come back and be in community, do things together again. So yeah, it is really odd to think that things are better, right, in some ways now than they were a year ago, even though everything seems worse.
Yeah. Kanetta, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Kevin said. I think that, as you know, Joel, we always have issues with, this time of year from a Sunday perspective, but, adjusting, being online has made Rohan more engaged, and Kevin's done a wonderful job with the group. And I think that seeing them as engaged as they are and the conversations that they've had has been just such a positive experience for my children. And I think that's been just more so than having been in person. I think in person they were less engaged. I think it was more of like, oh, I got to be here. I think this has been a much more, I'm encouraged and energized to see what happens after, what this online experience is, and almost hope that we continue the online experience for these kids going forward, more so than just our normal Sunday youth groups.
Well said. Sue?
Well, it's her husband right now talking. Well,
Okay.
you know, every time we talk about communion and that it's the Lord's table and we're all breaking bread, whether it be on Saturday or definitely Sunday, something that caught my imagination is how humongous this table must be, because it goes from house to house to house to house to house. We're all sharing communion and we don't even think a thing of it.
Mm. Very true, Walt. Yeah.
No, you just raise your hand.
Debbie, you still have your hand up. Do you want to jump in or? Okay. All right. Anybody else before? All right. Sue, what do you think about all that?
Well, I think that is very powerful, isn't it? And, you know, we are a people who believe that prayer makes a difference, aren't we? I mean, that's who we are. We believe that prayer makes a difference. And if we really believe that, and we think about how the congregation has really been praying all the way along, but in particular now we're talking through this pandemic season, you know, and reading all the notes from Debbie about everything. It, you know, kind of noticing and naming what is, you know, what breakthroughs are happening is really crucial to keep us tied to the power of our church's prayer life. Do you know what I mean? And you know, I would urge you that as this focus on prayer at the center has become so deep into what you're doing through this pandemic season and the church building season and all of this, to keep it as the culture of your church and keep re-upping it. Do you know what I mean? And especially, I urge you to keep taking times like we just did to notice and name and share with each other the breakthroughs that you're noticing, whether they're in the church, whether they're in your own life, because you know, when we do that, it keeps us connected with how powerful and real our prayer life is, doesn't it? You know, if we're all praying and let's say that Kevin, you know, shares something that, you know, he's got a breakthrough going on, it motivates me to pray more. Do you know what I mean? You know, when we hear about from each other. And so, way to go, church. This is so powerful. And what spiritual momentum. Do you feel it? I've got Holy Spirit goosebumps, Pastor Joel, just hearing about this. Do you?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I'm reminded that it is a good practice to be able to talk about the good things. That, you know, we come together in these meetings and we always just sort of want to boil it down to the nuts and bolts of what comes next. But it's good also from time to time to revisit where we've been, along with where we're going. So yeah, it's encouraging, and I agree with you. And I told you that too. That every day I'm just honored to be able to be a part of this group. And I was thinking too, for the few folks we have here who have been a part of the congregation for a long time, and you know, going back a decade or more, the church, when they were in downtown Akron, had you know, church consultants come in and study and give their reports on what the church should be doing. But I was wondering, for some of those who are here tonight, it's got to feel good to have somebody like Sue from the outside come in and tell you we're on the right track and we're doing the right stuff, and not here's the list of 30 things you all are doing wrong or we're doing wrong. You know what I mean? You don't have to respond to that, but I think I probably am speaking for you on that behalf. And there's always room for improvement, of course, and to examine all that we do. But I feel as your pastor that I just every day I'm encouraged by the direction and the ministry we're able to do together. So yeah.
Well, I want to say that, and Pastor Joel, you want me to just continue a little bit, or do you want to
Yeah.
set set the table for what's coming next, or what would you like?
No, that's fine. I think Sue and I had a really good conversation, and maybe we can just kind of bring everybody into that conversation that the two of us had. And we covered a number of really great ideas that Sue had. And by the end of our conversation, we really sort of boiled it down to the idea that maybe what we need to do as our leadership moving forward is really try to identify the sort of, we were calling it the heartbeat of Harmony Springs, what's important to us as a church. And we've been discussing the breakthrough prayer. That prayer, of course, is number one at the list, at the top of the list. And then we started discussing some other things, and maybe, Sue, you want to go through a couple of those items, and maybe that will spur us on to some conversation. Oh, hold on. There you go.
Yeah, did Mr. and Mrs. France want to say something? It looks like your hand is raised.
You got to
It's
turn
down.
turn it off. Sorry.
Okay, I just didn't want to miss out if there was, something else you wanted to share. Yeah. So, one of the things that I'm absolutely convinced of, and some of you may know a little bit about my ministry journey. I'm a clergy. I have led congregations, and for the last 10 years, I've worked as a trainer and a consultant for churches that really want to catch the momentum of the Spirit for what God has in store. And so I'm just one of those, in the trenches kind of people with churches that are looking to claim their next chapter, just like you are. And I do want to reiterate, I'm absolutely convinced, and I know you are too from Scripture. The book of Acts is very clear about this, that the Church of Jesus Christ was never intended to be simply an organization. Do you know what I mean? An organization to maintain and administrate. Not what the Church of Jesus Christ was ever intended to be. It's always from the beginning that God intended it to be a movement. A movement. Remember, it went out the doors of the upper room and into the streets and into the world, and kept going and spreading and transforming. And when leaders such as yourselves really embrace that you've been called to lead and fuel a movement, not maintain and administrate an organization, it changes everything, doesn't it? Changes everything. Changes meetings, changes priorities. This whole, center everything on prayer. The food of the fuel, the food and fuel of the movement of Christ is prayer. So you've been feeding the movement with prayer. And this is off the subject really, but just on this weekend, I got the author's copies of a little book on how to launch and fuel a breakthrough prayer initiative. I was asked to write just the nuts and bolts of how a congregation can do that and keep it going. And so this here just came, and it's on Amazon and Cokesbury.com, and it's available. And I'm only telling you about it that as you get ready to actually move into your building, it will be really so very important not to let yourselves shift into administration of an organization mindset. Do you know what I mean? I mean, certainly there'll be some important parts of that, going to move into the building, and where you're going to have tables and chairs and art hung on the walls and signs, and there's some of that there. But I've seen this many, many times, that when a church is blessed with the dream of an actual building, that they build, or you got a new building, it's just amazing how the focus goes off the the actively fueling everything, the movement with prayer, and gets on to the administrative organization primarily, and sometimes only. And before you know it, you're in your new wonderful building and you go, what happened? Things feel a little flat around here.
Mm.
Do you hear me? And
Yeah.
so this is my urgent word to you, that in everything, as you transition into actually possessing the new building when it's finished, and knowing Debbie, she will relentlessly lead this anyway, so I don't even need to say it. But, you know, everything have a prayer component. Think up something that engages not just a few people, but everybody. We're going to pray over this, and we're going to pray for that. And we're going to prayer walk this, and we're going to dedicate this with the prayer. And, you know, this culture and momentum of prayer that you've developed, keep kindling it afresh. Do you know what I mean? Um, because I tell you what, it's like rolling the boulder up the hill and you quit and it just rolls right back down to the bottom and you go, oh my gosh, what happened to us? We were on the move. And so just remember that that is the fuel for the movement that you're leading, called the church. And it's different to lead a movement, isn't it? That's different than just administrating a business or an organization or the YMCA or the Rotary Club or something. I mean, leaders of a movement such as you are, whole different, you know, different skill set, different way of thinking, different priorities. I love what Pastor Joel was saying at the beginning, you know, who we going to be, a few statements that this is what we're about, you know, are absolutely huge when it comes to thinking of the church as a movement. I want to lift up just a couple of these things that Pastor and I talked about. I guess it was yesterday, but I want to pause here. What do you think about this whole, you're leaders of a movement, not the administrators of an organization? Does that resonate with you, or does that put you off, or what are you thinking as I'm, you know, proposing that? Look at that. I think Kevin has his hand up, maybe, and Dick and Sally do too.
Yeah, well, in 25 words or less, what do you mean? How do you define a movement?
Oh, what a great question. I think of a movement. Let's see. I think of a movement as having the qualities that we're going someplace, we're entraining people as we go. Do you know what I mean? Like as we go, more and more people join in. Remember in the book of Acts, the early church, you know, the Bible says, you know, many people were joining it every day and getting involved in the breaking of bread and the growing in Scripture and serving other people. So when I think of a movement, you can even think of a secular, you know, the anatomy of a secular movement, if you'd like to. I mean, there's been movements throughout civilization where people went from sedentary to realizing we have a purpose and we have a cause, and you know, we're going to surge forward and we're going to change the world or do whatever. And that's what I think of as a movement. What do you think about that, Dick? Does that answer your question, or what do you think about when I talk about a movement?
Well, no, I wasn't sure, and I kind of get the idea of what you're saying, but you know, I was just curious.
Yeah. Oh, look, Greg put something really good in the chat. Greg, do you want to unmute yourself and just say that?
I tried to get Webster to define a movement because all attempts to search for movement from a definition perspective are like exercise and stretching. It just didn't work. But for a movement, they say it's a group of diffusely organized people or organizations striving toward a common goal relating to a human society or societal change or the organized activities of such a group.
Yeah, and that definition gets away from church, you know, becoming just caretakers of a building.
Mm.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, I like what Greg said. I mean, an organization or a movement does have some organization to it, doesn't it? Strategic organization. Do you know what I mean? If we're going to surge out and then train more people and impact for good and all of that, we've got some organization in there. But we don't just focus on organizing only. Do you know what I mean? It's just for this skeletal structure purpose of the movement. Joel, it sounds like people on the leadership team could have fun talking about that idea
Yeah.
of the movement, going forward. What were you going to say, Pastor Jennifer?
As you talk about movement, it makes me think of like the breast cancer movement with the pink everything, and or somebody who organizes a walk to raise money. It's a movement. There is organization, as you said, to be able to put on whatever happens, or any organization that takes donations is trying to further a cause. And so some of what we need to do is making sure that we define the cause and what exactly that is, and then the pieces that our movement entails. But I like too what you said a bit ago about it's not just us doing the work and going somewhere in what we do, but it's also training others. And that's really it should be the culture of a church to bring up others to be involved and take part in the mission and ministry of, reaching out as we do.
Mm.
I think we could, it would actually be fun to study great movements in Christian history. Do you know what I mean? And there have been where a group of people, leaders, begin to think like this is a movement with the love and the message of Christ, and what can happen. And so just to introduce that to you. Now, I want to share a few other parts that you might want to pray through as the leaders of this movement, as you're moving closer to the building being completed and continuing to embrace this call to green and the mission field there. And so here are some ideas that might be worth discussion, and I want you to know that if any of these end up connecting with your passion, or collectively you all think, okay, we want to do more of that, learn more about, get guidance on that, either I or I have a number of colleagues who are specialists in each of these that I could help you connect with who would be the best to accompany you if any of these sound helpful to move forward. I've talked about the breakthrough prayer. Here's the second. It's already been said earlier relative to Kevin and sounds like the youth ministry. Kevin, is that your piece?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I want to say that as we move further in the pandemic season and things reopen and whatever, to keep embracing, relentlessly, the both and. Friends, nothing will ever be the way that it was before the pandemic. That is gone, isn't it? Gone. And this is really true. It's just like what Greg was saying. Some people love attending online, don't they? They're more attentive even to attend online than they were in person. Deep connections. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I heard from so many church leaders, oh, deep connections will never happen over Google Meet and over, Zoom. And look at Kevin and the youth. Look what's happened. The Holy Spirit can and does work. One of my other churches has planted an entire new online congregation. People who've never been in the building found them online. They have pizza with the pastor, get acquainted times, virtually. They've had membership classes. They've had people be baptized. They're in Bible studies. And how many did I tell you, Joel? did I say 82 or 72? I don't have that in front of me anymore. New people, never been in their church, but through the pandemic, they have a whole another congregation. And rather than thinking that when they get back in the building, those folks are going to come, why can't they still be an online congregation? Do you hear me?
Mhm.
So churches in the future, and I urge you to be one of them, to keep the strong online, everything you're doing. And, if you're going to resume in-person worship in the building, that's wonderful. But don't let up, because we're in a both and time now. And you all have figured it out, it sounds like.
Mm.
Yeah, Jennifer, what were you going to say?
Can you say more to define the both and what you mean by that?
I mean both online and live. That's what I mean by the both online and live. And
Okay, thanks. I wasn't sure if you were thinking a little bigger or differently or outside that.
yeah, sorry about that. And, even I'm positive you would never do this. We have some churches where leaders in the online worship are inadvertently saying things like, now, don't worry, someday we'll all be back in person and it will be better than this. They're saying that. Now, don't say that. This is great for some people. This is great. They love it. They love online, and we don't ever want to act like online is second best, because now there are people who think it's number one best. And how do we be both and? Greg, I saw your chat, but I didn't get to read the whole thing. What'd you say?
I've just in terms of defining the concept of both and, to me, it's the answer to the either or mentality. There's Jesus doesn't give us a my way or the highway. He asks questions and creates choices and leads a little bit more gently than that. And both and basically says we can, if we're committed to it, we can figure out how to do church inside the building and simultaneously let David participate from Texas. That's a reasonable thing that we should be able to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, online mission field is just as crucial to reach as in-person mission field, isn't it? Everybody counts, and the goal isn't, I can remember earlier in the pandemic, a pastor saying, well, we'll get them attending online so that we can ultimately get them to attend later in worship. Well, is that really the goal? Do you know what I mean? Attending period is the goal, right? If you're a both and church. And what were you going to say, Conetta?
So I think one of the other advantages is, today's workforce and busy lives of parents and things like that. Sunday worship isn't always an option for everybody. So, there's a lot of people, myself included, who've always been excluded from worship services because we can't be physically in person on a Sunday. It's great to be able to go back and see a service with all of the wonderful people that are on this call at an alternate time. So I feel like I'm still worshiping with my family without having to be, tied to that specific time and date that was set. So I'm sure there are many, many other people, right, that are in that same situation. Maybe you have a flex schedule, or you're in a first responder, or whatever it might be, right? To still be able to go back and say, oh, I wonder what Pastor Joel talked about, right?
Well, that's it. And, that's excellent. And one last thing here, and then I'll move on to a couple others. But I just do want to point out that so just as back in the day when you were able to just worship in person, back before all this, you always worked to continue to improve your live worship, didn't you? How do we create a better experience for people? How do we, this and that? And in the both and of now and the future, that same attentiveness has got to be also applied to the online service. Do you know what I mean? How do we continue to improve and enhance, the interactiveness of our online worship, just as you're going to do that in your new building with your live? The both and says one doesn't take the priority over the other. It's, we're going to really keep, trying to maximize both of those. Pastor Joel, is it okay if I talk about something else? Is that all right? Do you want to say something here?
No, absolutely. And I speak for all the those here, I think, in saying that those are discussions we've had that I think we want to we affirm that thought. And I was just thinking that it's a shift in thinking that I have to get my mind around also, down the road in the future when we're in a hybrid situation like that. If we're live streaming it, I got to keep in my mind from the front of the church that we have people joining us that are there, either present at that moment or down the road. So we got to think through the ramifications of how we do that and how we can best incorporate people and welcome them without making one or the other feel lesser than the other. I agree with you. That's all good stuff to think about.
Well, I think of all the people for whom Joel has become their pastor, that Joel's never met these people,
Yeah.
never met, and they're out cruising. I'm not sure where is it on Facebook? Where the service, people out looking for Pastor in their minds. Pastor Joel is their pastor, never met him, never seen them. And, this is a whole new season and how to be attentive to this reality. And it's goofy, isn't it, Joel and Jennifer? It's goofy. It's different.
Yeah.
But very wonderful. A couple of other things, friends. So that going forward, we've talked about the breakthrough prayer and being a movement. We've talked about being a both and church, that online and in person, both equally crucial mission fields. Here's a third one. How do we put people above property? I've heard it said, and let me explain a little bit what I mean by that. Before it was, I'm not saying that this happened to you all. Before I believe that the church in America, many churches kind of had a sense that the physical building itself, was kind of, we might lend space at times to, I don't know, the Boy Scouts, the this or the that, but this is kind of our dedicated, building and space. Listen, I'm telling you now, coming out of the pandemic, it's very different because of this both and online and in person. And I really think that it would be well for leaders of the movement of your congregation as leaders for you to consider your new beautiful building as a gift of God to serve and welcome your mission field, and that's the primary purpose for it. It's a ministry tool, and it is the glorious new tool, isn't it, for the mission field of green? Glorious tool. And that isn't to say you're not going to use it for all your discipleship and the church activities, but if it's this kind of a switch, what happens when a church switches of thinking? The primary purpose of our building is for us to worship in and hold our activities, and then in other times we'll let the community use it. It's a mind switch for a movement of Jesus to be thinking, sure, we'll worship in here, we'll have our discipleship, but our primary is how can we totally bring the love and the presence of Jesus to our community through the great tool of the building. And do you see there's a shift in there, isn't there? And one way that you can it sounds like you've already, according to what Debbie is saying, you've found some persons of peace in the community. That language is out of the fresh expressions, and partners who are changing the world that you can join with, and all of that. And so that's a wonderful thing. And maybe your question now, given the thought, if you decide that your building is an incredible ministry tool, and that's going to be the primary use of it, because you've sure learned you can worship wherever, can't you? And listen, there's a process, it's pretty simple, where the congregation, you could actually create what I call little vision teams of 3 or 4. This is not for the staff to do this, for congregation to do. And there's a whole strategy where you can spread out across your mission field, and talk to everybody from the police department to the city government to local businesses. And the conversation goes like this. We're from our church, and we would love to know, how can our space and our building serve this community? What would a great church be doing with its building to really enhance people's lives here? What are your ideas? You need any partnerships? Need any space? Do you know what I mean? And you send out these vision teams with a set of a few questions, and just collect the answers, make friends, make acquaintanceships with all of these civic and business leaders, those conversations. You bring it back together, and you talk about how, if with the church praying as it is, you could bring it back as leaders, and you'd be blown away what will clearly emerge to you as powerful ways that right off the bat, your church building can become literally the center of green, the hub of green, the go-to place. People will be saying, we're calling that church. They're all about partnering and making things happen. They're all about, and isn't that what the movement of Jesus, is about? And isn't that your dream? Joel, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that when you and I were talking about this, the one thing I loved that you mentioned was that we could go out to those organizations and places and ask them if we could be the number one call on their list for if you need a space to do whatever it is they're doing to bring about change in the community and all of that. So yeah, Jennifer, I saw your hand.
And I think that's one of the things, this Jennifer, sorry, that this Jenny, that we had started, just sent out the email to start what we're calling as a community support service team. That initially we have to establish the team who will be on it, but the next step is then brainstorming and then going to the different places in the community to find out what's already there that there's maybe not a need for. But the other thing is, what is the need, in that community, and how we can help. And then go to the people in the church to see what people in the church can do that. And then the next step, what we looked at was, what could we open the church up to? I mean, there's been some suggestions, open it up to a counselor so they can have their appointments there, AA meetings, things like that. But it's a process, as everything. But Jennifer and I are going to be on that committee, and we're waiting for the other people to respond, which I'm sure it'll be a positive response. So.
Yeah, that's good. We have one pastor at First United Methodist Church in Tomah, Wisconsin, and what they've done at their church, the same kind of thinking. They don't have a new beautiful building like they big old historic church building, but it doesn't matter. Their leaders said, hey, this building isn't just a place where we the intended just for worship and Sunday school. this here is a tool. And they actually have a couple of leaders that comb the local news every day. And if anything's happening that warrants it, one or the other calls up and says, hey, we're First United Methodist Church on Toma, here in Toma on whatever they are, Main Street. Can we help? You want to have that at our church? Can we host that? You need people. What do you need? We're all about this. And they have achieved being the place that people call first, because they created the sense that they are there for the community. And anyway, just thoughts. Joel, how did I do? Covered a few things. I could go on and on.
Yes.
Um,
That was great. The only other thing I might appreciate from you before you jump off is, maybe revisiting the strategy that you've written and talk about with the triad of events as something that may be down the road for us as the pandemic clears up, if you don't mind.
No, I'm all about that, and I wonder if the people on the leadership team, Joel, are familiar with the term triad, or shall I explain what we mean by that?
You might want to explain it, because I know when we discussed it before, we have a sort of rolling leadership team, so not everybody was a part of it necessarily.
Okay, all right. So when I talk about the triad strategy for a church, for a congregation, for a movement of Jesus, what I'm really talking about is moving from a mindset of single events to a mindset of we're going to do a little series if we're going to do something. I'm not talking about what I've just referred to when we're calling and we're becoming the go-to call first church. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when the congregation thinks we want to be proactive and making new friends in this community. And we've looked at our demographics, or we've looked at our neighbors, or whatever it is, and we want to be proactive to make new friends in whatever it's going to be, young families with kids, senior adults, whatever. And we want to be strategic about making new friends. And so the triad strategy is when we think of a sequence of opportunities where we can invite them to participate, where we church members are. Now listen carefully. We're not there running the activity only. We're not there just putting food on their plate and taking tickets or cleaning up. No, there might be a few people doing that, but the congregation shows up with the sole purpose to get acquainted with the new people. Do you hear me? Make new acquaintanceships, make new friends, get to know people, learn names, welcome people, to make your church real living people. So folks think they're coming for an activity, whatever it is, but you know what it really is? It's a fishing pond for the congregation to walk around with only one purpose, not to talk to each other. Do you know what I mean? Not to talk to your friends, at your church friends. Do that anytime. It's to find people you don't know, sit down, have coffee with them, or join them, whatever. And listen, at the end of the first thing that you might invite them to that would resonate with their interest or their stage in life or a need that they have, right? You have to think strategically. At the end of that, you invite them back for another one, not in 6 months, not in 3 months, not even in 1 month, maybe in a week. At the most 2 weeks. In a week, you invite them back, And all the congregation is saying to people, oh, good, I'll see you then. I'll be here. I'll be looking for you. I'll see you then. Do you hear it? And when they come back to that, you've got something else that they're invited to next. And what you're doing is you're creating environments where people can make friends, feel at home. I like these people. I like what's going on. This church has something that I need. I could be comfortable here. This isn't like any church that I'm not just going to an event and going home. I'm not just having my bowl of chili and leaving. Oh my gosh, these people are really lovely. You know, I got to know these Debbie by name. There's a lady named Debbie who's going to be looking for me to come back. So I'm going to, Debbie will be looking for me. So I'm going to go back, you know. There's a whole triad strategy that certainly we could unpack in much more detail and brainstorm one. But I think it's when a church moves from thinking once a year we're going to have the bounce house on the lawn for families to come to, and then we can't figure out why they don't end up in worship. Do you know what I mean? People had a good time, but they didn't come back. Well, we had only one event. Do you hear that? And the triad says, we're not just hosting events to entertain the community. We're hosting activities to make friends with the community, to build relationships where people can experience the delicious love of Jesus that bonds your congregation. And how did I do, Joel? What else do you want to say about that?
No, I think, thank you. That does a good job either refreshing our memories or putting it out there for us to think about. So I think that's, you've given us a lot to think about. Maybe we can, do you all have another, if you have another 10 or 15 minutes, maybe we can, I don't want to keep Sue either. So maybe we can kind of discuss some of these ideas and put together some action plans, and then we can let her know what we've come up with and go from there.
You know, thank you so much for including me in the first hour of your meeting. It's just such a privilege. I've been praying for you all every day, big fans of your pastors, and especially of this opportunity that you have in Green, that you're, you know, the dream of the church is coming together. And, you know, this is really such an exciting time. May I pray for you before I sign off? Is that okay?
Please.
Okay. God, we give thanks that you are not only our comforter, although you are, that you're not only the one who provides us wisdom, although you do. We give thanks that you're not only our healer, although you fully are. We give thanks that you are our Almighty, the one that does above and beyond what we could ever ask or think or imagine, the one who leads us forward, shows us the path, and gives us every reason to become bold dreamers in a very practical, step-by-step way of your kingdom on earth. Especially, we ask for your blessing upon this team of leaders, these pastors. We ask that you would continue to break through and just inspire them with your pictures of the future. And may they, God, help them to remain committed to asking you always what you would have next, and looking to you. May they always center all of this in prayers for your direction. All this we ask in Christ's name, and we say together, amen.
Amen. Well, thanks so much, Sue, and for your time tonight and for just walking us through some of those to help get us started as we keep on talking about what our ministry is going to look like in the next season of Ministry for Harmony Springs. So thanks for joining us tonight, Sue. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. No limits. It's an open road. Open road. Okay. God bless everybody. Good night.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Good night.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we don't have to spend a long time processing. We can keep on discussing some of these things, but my overarching thought, both talking with Sue, yes, a couple days ago, and then tonight again, is confirmation, I think, that we're on the right track, that she has brought up again a number of things we've already been discussing. And I think we're just kind of at the point where we have to sort of nail down the nuts and bolts of how we want to go about being proactive to make this happen. And the other thing I was sort of thinking at the end as she was talking about the triads is that I think my sense is that when we get in the building and COVID is maybe somewhat in the past, and we can be together in person again, that we're going to have the church is going to have a lot of sort of pent up energy in a lot of ways, because we've been at home for so long and not in person. And I really want to try to capture that as much as possible with our congregation and our folks, and really channel that in a way, I guess, into maybe some of these triad events she's talking about, and really being as outwardly driven as possible as we're launching the building and all of that we're seeing. So I think a couple of things I'll just throw out right off the bat that I was thinking in after having conversation with her the other day and then today. One, I think I didn't realize that she had just come out with this other book, Debbie. So I think as she explained it to me, it really is a smaller book that just outlines a lot of the nuts and bolts on the Breakthrough Prayer Initiative, and answers a lot of questions that churches had on how to keep that at the forefront of what they're doing. So my first gut thought was that we should order some copies of that and at least have our leadership read through it to be able to be refreshed on what that is and how we can continue to keep it at the forefront. And then I was writing down some other things. We're going down the direction of the both and with the online and hybrid, but we probably need to spend some intentional time really just thinking about how that's going to function for us specifically and how we want that to function. So that was the second thing. And then putting together some sort of a plan on these triad events. If, I'm thinking that's the sort of thing that will happen as we're able to be back in person in the building again, in conjunction with the vision teams that she was talking about, which is the other thing I wrote down. And she said to me in our conversation that that is a whole, she has access to that as sort of a strategy for the church as well. And even has and is willing to share with us sort of a script that we can use when we're either calling or visiting places. So I'm sure she has offered to be willing to share any of that information with us so that we can kind of do that. So my gut thought was that, maybe we can get together one or two groups like that. We're not a huge congregation, so I don't think we need all of us out there doing it necessarily, but we certainly can have a number of us out there brainstorming the different organizations we can talk to, and really trying to be proactive, I guess, get ahead a little bit of as the building is being opened, and we're there all the time to, as soon as we can, really start making it available to those groups in our community as a sort of form of showing our love and living out our mission within the community. So those are the thoughts off the top of my head. I'm willing to hear any thoughts that you have if you want to discuss it for a few minutes here. Kevin?
Yeah, I really appreciated that. I put some things in the chat as well. I have to actually go meet with the youth group. I'm going to beat them at a video game. But I think
You're going to try to beat them at the video game, Kevin, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's right.
Rohan is very good. And often wins. But I really think what she was talking about is very similar to what I envision or I hope will come out of the youth program. And I think that having the youth involved in this way, involved in community building between other youth programs in the area or just like service projects in the area, that's a really strong way. And I think to get the community involved as well. So I was inspired. I think that's really great and awesome. And for those of you who know about the Harmonize Ohio thing, I think that is really similar to what that's aiming for. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. And it's also great to see all of you. So with that, I must go lose to Rohan.
Sounds good. When I get done here, I'll have Jameson jump on with you.
Great. Bye.
Bye. Kanetta?
So as we talked about, you know, the triad opportunities, and we talked about that, how do we make that work in a virtual world? Like, how do we look for opportunities, you know, whether that might be outreach, as we talked about mental health or other things, like how do we extend that to our, you know, virtual community? Because, you know, a lot of times I think the focus is going to be on in-person. And you know, we have to remember that's going back to, it's tying the triad to the both and, right? How do we keep that in mind as well?
Yeah, that's a really good thought. We need to spend some time thinking about. Off the top of my head, I was thinking that one good example of that maybe is, you know, we were talking about having Terry and Mary do leading a weekly sort of yoga meditation that would have a few people gathered in the building and be live, but something like that we could also live stream and include people that are doing it from their own homes. So I think we maybe have to think even more outside the box, like you're saying, and try to find events like that that are designed to be inclusive of both in person and online, which is interesting to think about. I'm open to any other conversation on that, but that's just off the top of my head. One thing I did want, I wondered if Shannon, if you would, I've really been thinking about this a lot, and we talked about it at staff meeting a bit ago, but you and I have talked a message back and forth a little bit about your sense and where we are at Harmony Springs, and just, you know, what the pandemic has sort of given us a gift to be able to just be the church we want to be. I don't know, you probably would do a better job describing that. And I wondered if you just would tonight to kind of bring us all into that conversation.
Sorry, I am not good with these. I hung up on us earlier, Debbie.
Yeah, we know. You're good.
I mean, you know, I like things burst into my head. Whether I remember all of it now, that's another thing.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, I'm always the type of person that's like, you know, there are just even bad things happen for a reason, and that, you know, that we've got to constantly be looking at, you know, that maybe this was for a good thing. And so, I mean, I thought about it the one night when we were doing something, and it's like, you know, who cares how we reach people as long as we're reaching them? You know, if they're sitting on their couch and, you know, tuning into church every Sunday or whenever, then that's great. If we're reaching them and they feel God's love, then we've done what we're supposed to do. And I think we really do have to like get out of all of our old habits that wasn't what God intended. I think it's just habits, and those habits are easy and they're comfortable, and so we stay in them and we maintain the church then, because that's the easiest way to do it. Doing something different and new is hard, but I mean, God, you know, like I said, so many times I've heard people say, like in the school setting where I'm at, that, you know, all the times that we said, well, what if somewhere down the road we could do this or we could do that? This is the perfect time for every what if, you know, that we've ever really thought about. I mean, because like I say, we have no expectations at this point. The rule book got thrown out, and we can start something really new and fresh. And like I said, I think embracing, you know, the online stuff is, like I said, if the ultimate goal is to reach as many people as we can and show them God's love, then let's do that. Like, let's not worry about whether they're showing up on Sunday, you know, or, you know, whether they're gonna, like, you know, come to a potluck or whatever. Let's do something new and exciting.
Thank you. I knew you'd do a good job at that. Thank you.
Try not to hang up.
Other thoughts? Anybody else have things they're mulling over before we call it? Yeah, Jennifer?
You know, we've had tangential conversations to this before, but looking at the people who are like maybe none or done with church, the fact that we're online doesn't look like church. It is. It looks very much like it to us. But a lot of people who don't like the building or don't like the memories or don't like the iconography or just whatever, you know, it's a way for us to it's certainly not water down anything. That's not what I'm suggesting, but to look at those who are more spiritual than religious. And what does that really mean? Because I'll tell you, I go into rooms at the hospital all day long, and I'll say, you know, do you have a religion or a spirituality that helps you when you're ill or that's important to you? And they'll say, no, 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 no. I don't go to church. I haven't been in church in a long time. You know, my mom raised me in the church or just whatever. And then 5 minutes later, they're saying, I pray to God every single day. And I really need God, you know, in my life. And God has held me through. And it's like people are defining things differently than they did before. And I'm a little sad that Kevin's gone because the younger generation, especially, you know, is looking at things this way. And so I wonder too, with what Shannon has said, you know, we can rewrite the playbook. So what is that, and what does that mean, and how can we find ways to reach those unchurched folks in a, I don't know, a less churchy way?
And you're bringing that up made me think that one thing, a conversation I've been thinking about, that an idea that Jackie sent me, actually. Jackie, I'm going to put you on here to share an idea, but Jackie had mentioned that maybe what we should do at Harmony Springs is offer a group that's like a church recovery group for, like, you know, people who have had a difficult, toxic situation in whatever church they're a part of for whatever reason. Maybe you want to talk about
That's
that a
what
little
we
bit,
already
Jackie. What's that, Cheryl?
I thought we were already attending that.
Yeah, no, I know. I feel like that is a calling we have as a church, and we have sort of become that. But I don't know, Jackie, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Basically, what I've been seeing a lot on social media and especially TikTok is people that are like recovering, especially like fundamentalist evangelical churches that they grew up in, you know, things with like purity culture and all of that kind of thing, and people just kind of got turned off by that, and now they still believe in God and, you know, the salvation of Jesus, but it's just like the people of church and the church as a symbol, they've just completely have been gone off of. So I was thinking maybe we could do some kind of group for people like that, and even people that aren't completely turned off by church. I would say that I grew up in a church like that, and I did take a break from church for a couple of years before I came to Harmony Springs. But I think that Harmony Springs is the best place for us to have something like this because of how inclusive we are. So I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But I think we're the best. I think we're the best option.
I saw a post today that I didn't read. Now I'm thinking maybe I should have. It was somebody who said that they got out of a session with their therapist, and their therapist had encouraged them to make a list of things that they were taught as a young person in a very fundamentalist church that they now as an adult needed to unteach themselves. And I think, yeah, I mean, Jackie's right. That's the kind of discussion that a church like ours probably ought to have, because you're missing a piece of the puzzle if that conversation can only happen somewhere else, you know? So I think we're we're capable of creating a safe enough space for that conversation to occur, and perhaps meaningfully open doors for some folks.
I agree with that, Greg. And I think it can be more than just, sorry, Shannon, I didn't mean to interrupt your raised hand. I think that it can be more than just maybe therapy or like commiseration, which I think those are important things. But I think like, what can we do to move on from that? And what God that we know can we show people?
Yeah, I'll jump in before Shannon, but I think that's important to both allow people to vent in a way, but also to give people the opportunity to take it a step further, which we don't often see in society, which is that people leave the church and start calling themselves, spiritual but not religious. But what if a church invited those people to be a part of a group and then said, how can you proactively create the kind of faith that you want to see in the world and in your own life, and not just complain about it? So yeah, Shannon, what were you going to say?
I mean, this might be a perfect thing for that triad thing, like that group, are you someone who's, spiritual but not religious, and then that's a group that we could really kind of like nail down and invite and I don't know if we would have like a speaker or something, but something that would be like a 3-thing event that, get to know those people then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's think on that. I think we're onto something there. That's for sure. Good.
Carol's
Anything
hands
else?
up.
Yeah. Oh, Cheryl, did you want to say something, or did you already? Go ahead.
No, I did. I was just want to talk about personal relationships again because I have a friend that works for Cleveland Clinic out of Florida, and we've been on a project for like a year and a half, 2 years, and most of our relationship is over the phone through a work situation. We've met once because she came to Cleveland for a training session, so we've only met once in person, but we've had a strong relationship through this work situation. And she's been sick for, I don't know, probably at least a year that I've known her. And maybe 8 months ago, I sent her one of Sue's prayer shawls, and that the church prayed for her and whatnot. And she, to this day, constantly talks about her relationship with our church and our prayers for her, and her prayers for our building, and is consistently donating to that building. So I think it's a big deal when you really reach out and connect on personal levels. She was raised Muslim, isn't a practicing Muslim. I haven't ever even asked her what she practices. I just know she practices prayer, and so that's been our connection. One of our connections.
Cheryl, is that Rosita?
Yes, it's Rosita.
We were just talking about her at staff meeting because Donna was going through the list of people who had given to our building fund, and her Facebook name is somewhat different, and we were trying to figure out who that was. And then I went back and looked, and I was like, oh, Cheryl is friends with her.
Yeah.
It must be somebody Cheryl knows. But yeah, I mean, what a great example though of how the pandemic has just given us this opportunity to be able to extend our reach. And I think we'd be
Well, she was just
pretty.
flabbergasted that the church would, pray over the. I mean, we did it virtually, but pray over the prayer shawl,
Yeah.
and I mailed it to her to Florida, and she wore that for all her treatments, and continues to, I don't even know exactly what's wrong with her, other than she's had various treatments and had some illnesses, but she just feels very connected with the church, and she watches, and looks at the pictures, and we just have a constant conversation and prayer with each other. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, thanks, Cheryl. Appreciate that. Jackie, did you have something else you wanted to interject?
Yeah, I think that when we go into
Hi, Daniel.
Sorry. When we go into doing things like this, I think the expectation from strangers is that we're expecting something back as a church or an organization, and I think that we need to be very upfront, or at least prove that we do not expect reciprocity, basically, like that we are here to give if we get members, if we get you know, donations or what have you. That's just a bonus, but I think that we need to, be very clear that we're not the expectation isn't there.
Yeah,
to
exactly. That was
have
never
something.
never even entered my thoughts that she would want to do something like that. But that she said that's how it makes her feel good, is when she knows that people are thinking about her. That was her choice. But yeah, I agree. It's
Right.
certainly no reciprocity thing.
Yeah. Is it Wally this time?
Yeah, it's Wally this time.
Okay.
I think what would solve the situation is when we have a group like that come in, our first major point is we wish to thank them for them coming. They're giving us a blessing, and start it off with that and be very grateful to them, because without them coming and sharing from where they are, we can't learn anything. Continue to share with anybody else that we may meet on the street. So what they may give us that day may be just the 1,000-watt light bulb that we've been needing, so that when we meet somebody on the street and they look like they're just not so totally down and out, but they've just had it up past their top, and you can read it on them and you go, hey, you look like you have a problem. I got plenty of time. Is there anything you want to share? And that will immediately give them a total different look on what we are and what we are all about, because most people will walk past you flashing a hat and not even want to become bothered. But the fact that you're there and you make that effort and you tell them, oh, no, you're doing me a favor, then they feel even more apart and more connected, because, well, nobody's done that before. And it's such a small thing. And one of my personal favorites is, and guess what? It didn't cost us anything. Just to take the time and to make them, now that you just made them feel like $1,000 because you took the time to say, hey, I see you. It looks like you may have something to share or talk about. And, that right there will possibly give them more energy that day than they might have had for the whole past month.
Well said, Wally. I think that's a good example of just the sort of shift in thinking that all of this is kind of putting on my mind, that these small shifts in our thinking and approach to things really will make a big difference down the road.
I didn't want people to be confused and think that I wrote that. I just typed it.
Yes,
I definitely saw you typing, so I was wondering.
Well, very good. We've definitely had a lot to think about. Let's sit on this, and I'll try to maybe put together an action plan to email out to everybody, and then we can figure out a time to get together again to really dive into these things specifically. I don't want to leave anybody out. Any other thoughts or final thoughts before we call it a night? All right, very good. Well, I hope you've all been somewhat inspired by this with Sue joining us, and I'm grateful for your time tonight. Thanks for being here.
Reminder that our next leadership meeting is in 3 weeks on the 23rd at 6:15 with Jacob.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
I'm busy that
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.